I've just realized your lack of heart. I will live with my parents in this house, so please leave. Ever since we got married, Scott, who has always relied on me, is now trying to kick me out of the house. Even though I pay $3,000 a month in rent, I've reached my limit. I had been considering divorce for a while, but Scott's remarks have solidified my decision. I understand. I will leave this house. Yes, get out quickly. I'm going out now. I'll be back tomorrow evening, but please pack your things and leave by then. Are you sure you don't need to check what I'm taking? Don't touch my equipment. You can do whatever you want with the other stuff. It seems I am free to handle the things in the house. In that case, I might need to call a jink removal service. And while I'm at it, I'll make sure Scott gets a taste of his own medicine. I work as a researcher at a major company. Having graduated from graduate school, I am 29 years old, entrusted with a responsible job appropriate for my age, and I have a decent income. As a result, I am able to live in a luxury apartment that costs $3,000 a month in rent. I am also married to Scott, and we live with our son Tyler. From the outside, it might seem like I lead a fulfilling life. There are people who struggle with their living situation or food, or those who are elderly and live alone, so I feel fortunate. Yet, I have my own concerns. The monthly rent of $3,000 is a strain on our budget. My income is decent, but honestly, the $3,000 rent is a significant burden. You're sounding like an old woman again with all your complaining. Scott is the source of my worries. If he worked properly, I wouldn't have to worry about the rent. However, he is a part-time worker dreaming of becoming a musician. He is pursuing a path as a musician but is already 30 years old. Scott used to be somewhat popular and participated in various events. However, entertaining a few hundred people at a live house doesn't provide enough income to make a living, so in reality, he leads an unstable life as a part-timer. When I was younger, I saw him shine as he chased his dreams. Scott, it seems I'm pregnant. Really? Wonderful. I'll work hard for our future child. I was 19 years old when I married him, and we started a family. Getting married meant he would have to give up his dreams of music and choose a life with his family. I had begun to question his perpetual part-time lifestyle, but I felt guilty asking him to give up his dreams for the family. However, my thoughts seemed meaningless. After our child was born, Scott continued his music and part-time jobs. I couldn't tolerate it anymore and warned him. How long do you plan to keep up the part-time jobs? You're nearly 20, you know? People your age are job hunting. I have my own way of living. Please don't compare me to others. Your words sound noble but lack conviction. If you want to speak from such a position, contribute to the household finances first. When I become famous, I'll make up for the earnings I'm missing out on now. Stop being so dreamy and face reality. With that, he had no rebuttal and eventually started a part-time job. Even earning $1,000 a month would be helpful. But Scott didn't stop talking about his dreams. You're being noisy. Times are different now. There are many paths to success without belonging to an agency. So, I'm not just dreaming anymore. It's just that my name isn't widely known yet. Companies have overwhelming power in advertising. However, I am making steady progress, even if it's slow. No matter how much I hear, it's baffling. When will he realize that it's all an illusion? Scott's band has already disbanded, and the former members have either married or found jobs. I think Scott should follow their example. Yet, Scott says, "You've given up your dreams." That's pathetic. I think giving up dreams to protect the family is a meaningful choice. But is that wrong? When I was pregnant, Scott said he would work hard for our child, but it seems he meant continuing his music career. However, I hope that once our child grew a bit more, Scott would see reality. Did you buy expensive clothes again? Appearance is important for my job. He hasn't earned a single dollar from music, yet what is he talking about? 10 years have passed since our child was born, and Scott is still a part-timer as he approaches his 30s. Despite a long music career, he sees himself as mid-tier without any notable success or achievements, which has led to increased spending on expensive clothes and music equipment. I wish you would contribute a bit to the household instead of spending money on such things. You can satisfy hunger with pretense, you know? What do you mean by such things? These are necessary for me. Since Scott always has this attitude, we frequently argue. To avoid showing our child the arguments, we choose times when he's not at home to talk, or we move to another room if possible. But the house is small, so our child inevitably hears us if our voices get loud. Therefore, we are considering moving to a bigger house. As our son grows, our current residence will definitely become too cramped. Hey, Tyler is 10 now, and this apartment is too cramped, so shall we move? Yeah, this was originally the house you lived in alone, after all. What? Do you have a complaint? You moved into my house when we got married, right? It's not a complaint. I'd like to move, preferably to a bigger house. Living in a high-rise condo would be cool, I think. What? Who do you think will pay the rent? I will contribute to the household too. I can handle the rent, but I'll help with electricity, gas, and groceries. Please, I really want to live in a high-rise condo. It should be possible to live in a high-rise condominium with my salary. Moreover, it's heartening that Scott, who has never contributed to our finances, has offered to help. This might be the trigger for him to face reality. By paying for electricity and gas, he might understand the daily struggles and the value of money. Okay, I'll look for a place then. I'll pay the rent, so no complaints about the property I choose. Agreed. Anything is okay if it's in a high-rise condo. I leave it all up to you. Despite these hopes, living in the high-rise condo began with Scott ultimately betraying my expectations again. A year after moving, Scott is still pursuing music at 30 and has not kept any of the promises he made when we moved. Hey, the gas bill has arrived. Please pay it before it's debited from my account. I'll give it to you next time. I don't have it right now. When is next time? You always say that, but then you don't pay. You're always fussing about money. Is money really that important? All I asked for was the minimum amount necessary for our living expenses. Why should I have to be scolded? He was supposed to have promised to pay in the first place. It was a good decision to set up direct debits from my own account. Otherwise, Scott might never have paid the electricity and gas bills. Sometimes, however, Scott does pay some money. What? There's $50 on the living room table. It was left by Scott, but he isn't home now. $50 is nowhere near enough. But I thought he left this amount to avoid handing it over directly to me, perhaps out of embarrassment. Is he showing some consideration? There's something endearing about that. It seems I was mistaken to think so. I haven't received this month's electricity bill payment yet. I pay it sometimes, don't I? It seems he only wants to feel like he's paying by occasionally handing over a few tens of dollars. To top it off, he lies and asks for money. I want to take my parents on a trip. Can you lend me some money? Okay, will $50 be enough? I appreciate it. Scott sometimes tells lies, but I know it's a sign that he wants some pocket money. He also knows that I understand he's asking for pocket money. Because of this, our conversations can be hard to understand when he asks for money. Such exchanges happen frequently because he often asks me for money. He probably uses the pocket money to treat his juniors or to show off. The rent is still $3,000 this month. It's tough. The rent for the high-rise condo we moved to is $3,000, which is certainly not cheap. I thought moving to a high-rise condo might motivate Scott to work, but he always disappoints me, and I have been struggling with the rent for 3 years. I can save money in this situation. Ideally, I'd like to use money for more meaningful purposes, like our child's future or for retirement. I've considered divorce before, but it seems it's time to seriously think about it. Then Scott made a remark that made me decide on divorce. Hey, we have an unused room, right? I was thinking of clearing it out and making it into a room for my parents. What do you think? A room for your parents, as in living together? What brought this on all of a sudden? My parents are getting older, so we can't just leave them be. His words sound noble, but Scott lacks the ability to follow through. Who does he think is paying the rent for this high-rise condo? Moreover, I'm also bearing the cost of living expenses and our son's education. Furthermore, the idea of being forced to live with my in-laws is absolutely unacceptable. I'm absolutely opposed. You don't need to answer so quickly. Think about it a bit. I oppose. Why are you so firm? What's wrong with filial piety? Are you telling me to abandon my parents? You're heartless. If you only hear this conversation, it might seem like I am selfishly refusing to live with them. But that's not the case. The problem is entirely with Scott. If we start living together, I can clearly see a future where he dumps all the responsibility for his parents on me. So I firmly refuse. I absolutely cannot live together. I see how heartless you are. I will live in this house with my parents, so you need to leave. Ever since we got married, Scott has been dependent on me, and now he's trying to kick me out of the house. Even though I'm paying $3,000 a month in rent, I want to make him aware of his helplessness and lack of achievements. He ordered me out of the house with unreasonable anger. I've reached my limit. I had been considering divorce for a while, but Scott's remarks have solidified my decision. Understood. I will leave this house. Yes, get out quickly. I'm going out now. I'll be back tomorrow evening, but please pack your things and leave by then. Are you sure you don't need to check what I'm taking? Don't touch my equipment. You can do whatever you want with the other stuff. Scott left the house after his final remark. It seems I am free to handle the things in the house. Mom, I'll help you. And I'll go with you, too. Thank you. My son came out of his room and offered words of comfort. Whenever there was a marital dispute, our son always went to another room. Creating a situation that makes our child feel the need to be cautious is heartbreaking for me as a parent. Our 13-year-old son used to enjoy playing with his father and liked him a lot when he was younger and didn't understand the situation. But from upper elementary school, he began to grasp the situation and started supporting me. Where should we start cleaning up? Tyler, start with your own things. I have something else I want to do. What? A scheme? I just want to give him a little shock. I took out my cell phone and called a specific place. Hello, I'm sorry for the urgency, but could you please help us tomorrow? After we finished organizing, my son and I decided to stay temporarily in a business hotel with only the essentials. We'll have to look for a new place to live. That night, knowing that Scott would call, we placed my smartphone on the table and quietly waited for the call. The smartphone rang and we looked at each other before I answered. Hey, what's going on here? What are you doing? What do you mean? What's the problem? Seeing Scott's panic, my son and I couldn't help but laugh. All my clothes and equipment are here, but everything else is gone. What happened to the tables and the fridge? Did you take them? No, I arranged for a junk removal service to dispose of everything. By now, it might already be burned. Tyler, are you there too? When my son intervened and spoke up, Scott was even more surprised. He probably didn't realize that Tyler was still at home and was shocked by the nearly empty house. What do you mean everything is disposed of? These furniture and appliances, I bought them, right? Well, they could be considered marital property. You said I could do whatever I wanted with everything except your equipment, so I just did that. But how am I supposed to live now? If you need to, you can just buy new ones. For now, why not use your amp as a chair or wrap a towel around your guitar for a pillow? That's not funny. To do such a nasty thing. We're getting a divorce. Yes, I understand. What? Scott probably thought I would be at least a little shaken by the mention of divorce. He might have also thought that this was just part of another marital argument. But I had already considered divorce, and his words held no threat for me. In fact, I was almost grateful that he brought it up. Really? You understand? We're getting a divorce, a divorce. You don't need to say it multiple times. I understand. I deliberately responded in a calm and cold tone. This should convey that I am serious about the divorce. Scott must realize that he would be the one to suffer from the divorce. Therefore, when he impulsively mentioned divorce and I accepted it, he clearly panicked. Yes, that's right. Scott seemed too flustered to find his next words. Normally, he would apologize and back down. However, perhaps due to his nature as a musician, he can't take back what he said. I know this character trait all too well. Once, I found that attitude appealing, but now it just seems ridiculous. We'll discuss the details of the divorce later, but you're planning to live with your parents in that house, right? Should I go to the real estate agent first to review the contract? Yeah. If the contract is changed to my name, the divorce cannot be undone. This is your chance to apologize. Well, maybe. It might have been a desperate attempt to resist, but Scott's voice was trembling. He might think that throwing out the furniture and appliances was my plan to move towards divorce. However, the grievances built up over 13 years of marriage won't just disappear so easily. I wish Scott would struggle a bit more. A few days later, Scott and I went to the real estate office to review the contract for the condo. My procedure is now complete. I was able to smoothly terminate the contract. However, when Scott tried to sign a new contract, a problem arose. What? The rent is $3,000? Scott's face turned pale. When I had made the contract for the high-rise condo, he had left everything from selecting the property to the contracting process up to me, and he was unaware of the details. It's impossible to pay such high rent. Even if I include my father and mother, he was astonished. What a situation. It seems that after I left, Scott planned to seek financial support from his parents. He thought that the three of them could somehow manage the rent, but the actual rent was beyond his expectations. Since the in-laws are pensioners and Scott himself is a non-regular employee, I foresaw that it would be difficult for the three of them to share the costs and make payments. Really? You've been paying this for a year? Scott asked, and I replied, yes, I've been paying this amount all along. Since you don't work, we haven't been able to save anything. I can handle such a contract. Don't worry. I don't think you can handle the contract, I responded. What do you mean? He seemed confused. He appeared to be so flustered that he had completely forgotten the rules for renting a home. I asked the real estate agent to help Scott understand the situation. Excuse me, is it possible for someone with an irregular income of $1,200 per month to sign a contract for this property? The parents will pay the shortfall. No, that would be a bit difficult. The applicant needs to have a certain level of income. See, I told you that you wouldn't be able to pass the screening, I said. The agent, hearing our conversation, probably sensed that we were going to part ways. He responded to my questions with a wry smile, unable to say much. So, what should I do now? If you can't make the contract, you have no choice but to leave, right? There are no other options since I've already canceled that contract. Wow, you've done something ridiculous again. Scott, who calls himself an artist, has an unnecessarily high self-esteem and likes to show off. It must have been a huge embarrassment for him, with his low income and a looming divorce, to be manipulated by me and to have others know about his situation. His face was drenched in sweat and as red as if he had just run a full marathon in midsummer. Ignoring my husband, I continued talking to the agent. It seems that things didn't go as planned, and the contract is impossible now. We need to move out immediately, right? I'm sorry for the confusion, but there's hardly any belongings left, just some clothes and music equipment. It's a small enough amount to clean up quickly. So could you check the procedures for moving out later? You knew I didn't understand the rent or the conditions of the house, and you still went ahead with this? Scott said, What do you mean? When I asked if you wanted to review the contract, you said you would handle it yourself. Whether you can fulfill the contract is not my concern. I replied, Don't lie. You know about my income, Scott said. I was hoping there might be a way for the contract to succeed, I answered. Don't joke. I'm not leaving here. Scott insisted. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. I don't know the legal details, but you might be sued for trespassing or failure to vacate. Oh, and since this isn't my property anymore, the real estate agency or the owner might take some action. It could get messy if a company reports it, I said. The agent looked on worriedly. I truly felt sorry for causing inconvenience. You don't want to be embarrassed any further, right? Go home now and pack your things, I told Scott. Scott left the real estate office without saying a word. I'm sorry. The house will be empty soon. If anything is left, I'll take responsibility for disposing of it, I said. Later, when the agent and I went to the house, it was already empty. Later, to apologize for the inconvenience, I brought sweets to the real estate office. The procedure itself would be fine if handled well, but the agent seemed confused by the very awkward situation. I am truly sorry. However, this brought the dreamy musician back to the real world. Now, he must strive to do well in the real world. After he left the house, our divorce was officially finalized. My ex-husband had no financial leeway, and since I had spent most of my money on rent, there was no dispute over the division of assets. My son chose to stay with me. My ex-husband might have sought support from his parents, but I had already blocked that path. After about 10 years of marriage, I informed my in-laws of the divorce and made my greetings. I thought it was only natural to communicate this process to my in-laws. Upon learning of my ex-husband's past actions, my in-laws decided to distance themselves from him and to withhold support until he finds a job and becomes independent. As a result, the plan for my ex-husband to live with his parents was canceled. Therefore, my ex-husband could no longer rely on his parents. Over 30 years old and having lived as a freelancer, it is difficult for him to find regular employment, and he is still working as a freelancer. His income remains low, and he struggles even to pay the rent for a cheap apartment. Under these circumstances, continuing music is almost impossible. This is the reality of my ex-husband, who achieved nothing. I have rented a new apartment and am living there with my son. After my husband left, the rent decreased, allowing me to utilize my funds more beneficially. While I don't deny the pursuit of dreams, living comfortably with my son under the current circumstances is what makes me happiest.